All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to actually place your files in here. Unlike other programs where you may copy paste, you really want to place content into InDesign. There are many reasons why you don't want to copy paste, but the biggest ones being A, it's easier to flow text across multiple pages. B, it also allows, if you change an image, you can quickly update instead of having to, go back and replace and remess with everything. So really just, this is one of those things that you should just trust me on. And really understand how to get content in here. Don't just copy paste. There are times where copy paste makes sense, but in general, we want to place content. So in order to place any type of content, whether image or text, we go to File, Place. Command D is normally what I'd use, or Control D on a PC. I use hand commands as much as possible, especially if doing a ton of things. So I was just going to pull up a random document here just to show you text versus other items. So I was going to actually find my thesis just to have a document to place. They need to be like, you can't just place a Google Doc. You'd have to download it as a Word document. I'll place this speech. It's fine. So I went through and hit File, Place. It's, especially with Word, depending on what default you have, it may say this, like missing fonts. Just skip it. It doesn't matter. You're going to change it anyway. So then I would pick a place to start and click. You notice I get a little preview here of the text, and depending on what item you have, you get a preview. It's going to want to go across the whole page. If you set up columns, it'll be better, but with a grid like this, it doesn't. And then what I can do is I can resize that column you saw, and then I'll get that little red plus that gives me more text. Again, this is the downside of a modular grid, is it doesn't want to adhere to the column. So everywhere the plus is, I can just keep placing content. And the benefit too of doing it this way and having all the text boxes flow is if when I'm designing and I go, oh wait, I need that to be smaller, it just automatically reflows everything. Versus if you copy paste and you have a whole bunch of blocks, it won't do that. So really make sure you're not doing a bunch of individual blocks, that you're doing a full that you've copied or that you've placed everything, that everything is in one box, even across multiple pages. Like notice the one will affect the other across the entire document. There are exceptions, like normally my cover page, that's not flowed with everything else because that gets to be a problem. And I might even decide like this whole section I'm going to have as one, but then this next section will be its own, so that like every time I move one thing, it doesn't move everything. But that just depends. So like for example, maybe the logo section is all linked together, but the color section's not linked from there. And I can keep going through until I've placed everything. There are ways you can auto flow this, but I'm going to start you with the basics rather than complicate life a ton for you. So it should just be one more and I should be good. But that's how you're going to go ahead and place text in here and start to work with it. Again, I can quickly, I could highlight all of this and change the font. So the pink's there because it doesn't recognize the font. Word uses some fonts that aren't actually available anywhere but Word. Plus, I think I typed it on a different computer, so I could always just go back to Arial regular, and now everything's in there. The document got longer though, so that's the other fun of changing fonts, changing things. But now everything will flow, so if I change one thing, everything else will shift accordingly. You also want to place images, perhaps even more important, like while I don't recommend copy pasting the text, you could probably get away with it. So for this, again, Command D or Control D, and then we're going to go ahead and place images. Pieces images, just to have something to work with. Alright, so let's say this is a photo. I can go ahead and place this. Notice it's also giving me a preview. So by default, it loads in usually at size. It just depends on the image. For this document, I resized everything to what I needed. But whatever it places at, because it normally places at full size. Let me see if I can find one that's bigger. Alright, let's try this one. Alright, so this one I obviously wanted to be able to use it bigger. So it'll place as big as it can. Obviously, if it goes to the next page, it's going to do that. With images, there's a couple different ways you can do it. And number one, you can just manipulate the box. That'll crop it. The next thing you can do is you can click on the circle, and then you can resize the image inside of it. Or if you most likely want to do both together, Command and Shift will maintain the proportion, and the command actually moves both the bounding box and the actual image to resize the image accordingly. And you'll notice, so my display right now, I talked about this in the thing, I had it on high quality. Normally it's on typical display, and you'll notice the quality will get a little less good. Not as noticeable here as it is with an Illustrator file, but that's just because it wants to save memory. So rather than suck up all your memory, it goes ahead and it sort of maximizes. So that was just under display formats. Fast display makes it even worse. Like the pictures basically disappear. I don't usually work like that, but I normally work in typical display because I've been doing this long enough. I trust that the images are fine, but if that bothers you, you can come to View, Display Performance, High Quality Display. You also, if you don't like the blue bounding boxes, which show up even if the grid is on, you can go to View, Extras, Hide Frame Edges. Normally I do that at the start of my document. And that's going to allow me to do that. Just to show you, like Illustrator too, you can place stuff. I'm trying to think where I have an Illustrator file off the top of my head. Oh, probably in my yacht stuff. Sorry, most things now, it seems like I don't use Illustrator for as much. Alright, let's just say I was going to place one of the JPEGs. I don't want that. That is still not an Illustrator file. Alright, yacht letters. You know what, maybe the patterns are a better choice. And you can also, so like if Illustrator, you guys made your collateral multiple artboards, you can click show import options, and this will actually let you, instead of defaulting to the first one, it will let you select which page you're going to do. So that will be important when you're importing those brand materials. So yeah, place that, and we could see a quality difference if I go back and go to typical display. You'll notice it gets a little kind of cruddy. It's harder to see on that. But that's how you can go ahead and start to place everything in your document. It's helpful, like in the instructions I said, type up all your text first. Then you can come through and quickly place everything and start the design process. And I'm going to talk about in a separate video how to set up paragraph and character styles, which are really important because if you do have a ton of text, it allows you to just highlight it, press a button, change everything, and if you change your mind at any point, that you can go back and change in a matter of a click instead of having to manually change everything. So this shows you, though, the proper way to place text and image into InDesign.